After the Civil War, the African Americans who were enslaved were freed, thanks to the 13th Amendment. While this ended slavery, it was not the end of racism. People of color were still treated as second-class citizens, especially in states of the South, who just had their slaves freed. One major factor of this discrimination was segregation. Anything, written or not, that established different rules for blacks and whites around this time came to be known as the Jim Crow laws. Many segregated rules and facilities were made around this time, such as separated areas in restaurants labeled white or colored, or separate drinking fountains made for either white or black people. These are examples of the discrimination shown by the Jim Crow laws. Many people of the time believed that white people were inherently superior to black people in areas such as intellect, morality, civilized behavior, and most any other important qualities. This belief of white superiority led to laws about voting such that it was significantly more difficult for African American citizens to vote in many states. Many of these kinds of laws lasted from 1877 to the mid-1960s, largely because they were more for segregation than outright discrimination. This persisted because of the rationalization that these laws didn't make life worse for black people, it just separated white people from black people. However, due to a general distaste for African Americans, as well as an absence of black representation in positions of power, there was almost always a significantly higher amount of effort and funding put into white facilities than colored facilities, if there even were facilities for black people. Nearly every aspect of people's lives were affected by these laws, with everything from parks to buses to restaurants having separate areas labeled either white or colored. Some of the modes of segregation can be seen in the laws of individual states. In Maryland, railroad coaches were required by law to supply separate cars for the different races. In Texas, white people could use the free library as usual, while black people had to have designated external modes of reaching the library. It was unlawful in Georgia for amateur baseball teams for white kids to be within a distance from a playground dedicated to black kids, and vice versa. These are only a few examples of the laws which are used by the different states, but the list goes on, with the most common law between states being the banning of interracial marriage. Even after these laws were repealed and black people didn't have to follow them, deep-seated racism plagued African American citizens. Many of these societal problems couldn't be stopped by governmental intervention, and they still can't really be stopped. As such, these problems have stayed with our society. Hopefully with enough education and open-mindedness, we may one day rid our country of this prejudice.